Earlier this year, Spain were crowned the 2024 champions of Europe. And overall, they really did play the best football. But for many, there was really only one thing that left a bitter taste in their mouths. This guy right here. For some reason, Marc Cucurella decided to take shots at Erling Haaland, a guy whose country wasn't even in the 2024 Euros. And what made it even worse was that, in Haaland's words, Cucurella is a funny man. Last season, he asked for my shirt, and now he's singing bad things about me. He can do what he wants. I couldn't care less. But you gotta admit, that is really weird behavior from Cucurella. And German fans definitely don't like him, especially since he had an objectively clear handball that wasn't called by the referee and could have very much changed the outcome of the match, leading to jokes online about how Cucurella is a better goalkeeper than he is a defender. Marc Cucurella is slowly becoming one of the most generally disliked and annoying footballers in the world. Don't get me wrong, I neither like nor particularly dislike the guy, but I can't help but notice that every time I see his name brought up in videos or posts, comments like these always seem to follow. And during the very first match of the 2024-25 Premier League season, Erling Haaland definitely did not forget that song that Cucurella was singing. As the saying goes, revenge is a dish best served cold. Somehow, this one-match interaction seemed to unify every Premier League fan outside of Chelsea to pile in and grow even bigger general dislike for Marc Cucurella. But even then, what's making it only worse is that for the last few years, there has been a growing number of Chelsea fans themselves who are starting to really dislike Cucurella, with an already high number of those who never even liked him in the first place. And it might have to do with the fact that he cost the club an insane £63 million or 73.5 million euros, being the second most expensive fullback in football history. Even with the crazy valuations and prices today, for many Chelsea fans, Cucurella wasn't worth anything close, because many believe, as Jamie Carragher says,
yeah, he can't defend. I mean, I was watching him in the game 1v1, and if you keep diving in, the fella keeps going past you. You've got to defend properly. You've got to move your feet.
Because when you're making Antony, in his current form, look somewhat productive in bringing up the ball, well, that can't be good. Not to mention having compilations of getting absolutely worked by a youngster like Garnacho is not a good look for any defender to be having. You'll even see Chelsea fans complaining about his constant backpassing and refusal to advance the ball. There are even rumors about how Michaela Mudryk does not like playing with Cucurella, publicly complaining about his constant backpassing as well, especially when he does things like this. And while I do agree that he does have a lot to improve in his overall game, a lot of the dislike towards him from his style of play, where he does tend to flop or dive, is not all that fair. There's a reason why Cucurella's style might not fit Chelsea or the Premier League, and that's because he's a traditionally conservative Spanish fullback. From his younger days as an Espanyol youth player to even formerly being one of the most valuable youth prospects at Barca's La Masia, Cucurella's style truly is only meant to fit in a Spanish system. I know what you're thinking. Raymar, there's no way you're making a video on Marc Cucurella. He's not good. I know I usually only make videos about the more iconic players in the game. But if you want a piece of your favorite sports icons at home, Ball Icons has framed and non-framed posters, wall art, and stickers immortalizing history's greatest athletes through minimalist design. They come in many different sizes, so you can put your legends on display with iconic art that needs no introduction. You know who they are. If you use my promo code Raymar, you can get a massive 25% discount on your next order. So go to ballicons.com now to put your legends on display. And I understand where you're coming from, but if his performance in the Spanish national team wasn't anything indicative of what he could really do under the right system and players around him, he might very well have the potential to actually live up to that price tag. But memes and his wild hairstyle aside, which we'll definitely talk more about later, his story of making it to the pros wasn't nearly as laughable. FC Barcelona would also do Cucurella very dirty. After being recruited from Espanyol to Barcelona's La Masia Academy, Cucurella initially struggled to grasp the famous positional play that was so integral to the Barcelona identity. However, over the next several months, he would eventually get the hang of it and started becoming one of their most indispensable left backs. Cucurella wasn't all that technically gifted, but he had some invaluable traits that are often overlooked by many fans. A competitive spirit, unmatched effort, and compatibility as a team player. This would help him establish himself in the youth team and slowly make the leap to Barcelona B. And there, he was becoming a key starter, even helping Barca B achieve promotion to the La Liga 2nd Division. And Cucurella would prove that the reserve team was much too small for him. It was only a matter of time before he would eventually make his first team debut. Finally, the long-awaited day arrived. In October of 2017, he would make his debut in a Copa del Rey match against Murcia. Everything seemed to be going smoothly. Jordi Alba's career was starting to decline, and although they had a very different playstyle, Barca still needed to find a replacement. And for many, Cucurella was the obvious choice. However, Valverde wasn't entirely convinced, although there were talks behind the scenes of how Cucurella would eventually be given the role and asked to step up. Barca decided instead to send him on loan to Eibar. I mean, imagine how that must have felt. Having to grind it out all the way from the youth academy, with everything pointing to you eventually being an integral part of the first team, being brought up to eventually take the role as Barcelona's starting left back. But suddenly everything vanishes, and you're not only being loaned away, but you're being loaned away to Eibar. And as it goes with being loaned, unless you really stand out remarkably, it basically means your club has lost sight of you. That turned him incredibly bitter, and as time went on, it seemed more and more unlikely that he would ever play at Camp Nou again. And he wasn't exactly a standout as a prime Jordi Alba, but many could see for Spanish football, he was incredibly solid. He was known for having unmatched dedication and passion on the pitch, running as endlessly as possible or playing as much defense as needed, doing whatever in order to help his team win. For that, Eibar would actually trigger the clause and sign him. But ironically, Barcelona was now in a tough spot. And well, this would lead to them making one of their many managerial blunders around this time. Because after seeing him play better, they wanted to bring him back to the club. Only this time they had to pay an additional 4 million euros to move him back. You would hope that maybe this time things would be different. But Barca decided once more that Cucurella wouldn't have a place on their first team. Then turn around and loan him to Getafe. And you could imagine for anyone, that would be devastating. He played so well for Getafe that they would officially decide to sign him for a fee of 10 million euros. Because playing for Getafe was really the closest that we could see to the same way that Cucurella would play in the 2024 Euros. He might not be the best at bringing the ball up, but what he really offers is his willingness on the defense. And when playing in a slower Spanish-style system, Cucurella's ability to pass the ball around and maintain possession is really at its best. And as we saw in Brighton, when you pair him with really skilled wingers, Cucurella might not be one of the more risk-averse fullbacks, but what he does is keep it safe. And for a guy of his quality and the things he provides, Cucurella could really be a solid player. Until he started to get a lot of hate for his insane transfer fee when moving to Chelsea. And seeing as how many more people slowly started to dislike him since then, it's crazy to think that Getafe initially actually tried to sell him to Real Madrid. And I'm not saying he's a bad player, because as we saw in the 2024 Euros, with the right playstyle, team, and pace, Cucurella could really be an incredible defender. But if Real Madrid had paid that much for him, the expectations might have been a little too high, because honestly, that's exactly what's happening at Chelsea. But this really does go to show you how a player's market value can really influence the overall public's image. Because like we've seen time and time again, usually these nonsensically high expectations can lead to a lot of negativity. And if you're a Chelsea fan seeing how well he played in Spain, you are definitely expecting him to play just as well. Well, Cucurella is already the biggest scapegoat in the club, and eventually more and more people will start to pile on him, and like we saw from Harry Maguire a few years ago, the more mistakes he makes, I'm afraid the more it'll just ruin his confidence. And of course, when that happens, the more fans will dislike him, the more that people will make memes, and the more he'll only continue to make mistakes and continue that vicious cycle. Cucurella does tend to run his mouth a lot more. So at the very least, he really does need to start playing like he was at Getafe. Heck, even in Brighton, he was pretty solid. Although I guess when you're playing for a relatively smaller Premier League side and had a much smaller price tag, there's a lot less pressure to perform. I know it's only been one match, and with the way that internet culture is these days, all these memes and edits on YouTube Shorts and TikTok, I'll have to wish Cucurella the best of luck.